Sunday morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and hobbyists of all ages. This is Patty and Patty's Aquatics, and today's September 15th, and it's a beautiful Sunday morning, and I want to talk about some dirt today. But let's say hi to some people, and there's a washer going in my background, so I'm hopefully it's not going to be too much of a nuisance. Brent and Lightcap, Milwaukee Aquarium Society. Where are you from? Because I am about 40 minutes north of there. And I had seen a video from Gabriel over at GNC Aquatics, and you sent him some fish, and it had a Tristan's tropical fish box. And I've ordered from him before, so I thought that was kind of interesting. Anyway, so what are we going to do today? Like I said, today we're going to talk a little bit about some upcoming projects. I want to talk about dirted tanks in general. I want to talk really, are they worth it? But before we do that, I do also have a huge special announcement, which I will unveil a little bit in this live stream. Something I'm very excited about, and I'm really interested in the project. So I hope everyone will be as well. But I'd like to get a few more people in here before I start talking with that. And as I said last week, I want to try to watch the chat a little bit more. I'm going to try to keep up with it a little bit more today. So good morning, Jorge from Mexicali Fish Keeper. Hello, Brenton. Hello, Wally's Freshwater Aquatics. Good to see you all here. From southern Wisconsin. Okay, so I am in Sheboygan, which is just between Milwaukee and Green Bay. So that's pretty cool. Hello, Chris from Stubbs Aquatics. Nice to have you here, buddy. Good to see you. So, like I said, today the topic's going to be dirted tanks. Are they worth it? And like I said, we'll get into it a little bit. I'm going to kind of I got a few notes, but I'm going to kind of just try to go at will with it and see how it goes, and try to maybe see if we get some interaction from you guys, and we'll just kind of go together with it. So that is the plan. But I also wanted to say, I know Maul's not on here yet that I can see, but I would like to say thank you to him again for last week for showing up on my live stream and being my first guest. I much appreciated that a lot. So let's see who else is here. Hello, Jonathan. All right. So again, if you haven't heard in the very beginning, I have a wash machine running in the background. My daughter decided to do wash before I started the stream, and it's about to hit the spin cycle. So I'm trying to put off the dirted tank talk for a couple of minutes here, just in case that starts making a big racket. So anyway, so what else is everybody up to today in this glorious Sunday, on this perfect Sunday for American football? If you're into that kind of stuff, I'm very excited for football to sit down in my chair a little later, put my feet up, and probably watch my Green Bay Packers get their butt kicked without their quarterback. But that's my plan for this Sunday. I also have off the day tomorrow. So tomorrow I plan on shooting a few videos for you guys to put out, which will be kind of cool. And I'm going to be working on a little bit on this project, which I'm going to be unveiling here in a little bit. So, hello, old-fashioned whiskey. How's it going? So, I guess with that being said, we can kind of talk a little bit about really, I guess, let's just go with it, a special note, the big announcement, the thing that I'm very excited for. Well, let's do it now. We can talk about it again later if more people come in, but it's for the live stream next Sunday. Very excited. I have a special guest coming, and he's someone that's big time into dirty tanks like I am. He's probably the person you think about when you think of dirty tanks. That's Father Fish. Father Fish has graciously accepted my invite to be able to come on my live stream for next week, and I'm very, very excited about it. I plan on doing like an interview video with him. I plan on asking him a bunch of questions, and I want to kind of know who Father Lou Foxwell, Father Fish. I want to know who the man is behind Father Fish. And I would like everyone to kind of figure out and see who that person is too. Because I know there's lots of differing opinions on him, whether you really like him, you like what you're doing, or you don't, and you don't know who he is, you don't understand it. I want to try to have everyone kind of meet in the middle and understand really who he is and what he does and what he stands for when it comes to his Father Fish method and all that kind of stuff. So I'm very excited for that. So as well, if people have any ideas for questions that you would want to ask him or want me to ask him, drop them in the comments here. If I see it, I will try to write it down. If not, put them in the comments of this live stream after I'm done so that it's on there permanently, and then I can write them down and I'll put that into possible questions to ask him as well. So very excited for that. Hello, 557 Charlie. How is it going? So that's pretty much the big news. Like I said, I'll announce it again later because there's only about 13 people here now, but very, very excited for all that. All right, so I think that's all I have for really announcements. The spin cycle starting now. Gotta love it. I don't know if you guys can hear it or not, but live streams, that's the thing. They're live. You don't know what's going to happen. Anyway, so as far as stuff that's been going on in my fish room, I brought in a few new lights. I think I talked about that a little bit the other week, and really excited with the way that they've been doing. Having a lot of new plant growth, and I'm kind of debating whether I want to kind of go all one direction with one style of light, or if I want to kind of keep it how it is, integrated with many different styles. So I have to see what's going on with that. I still have a new tank over here that I have not shown any of you yet. I'm still waiting for the inhabitants for it. Once I do that, I'll kind of unveil a big video. I haven't shot any footage on it, but eventually. Hey, Maul, how's it going? Hello, Roxy. Nice to see you here. So I guess let's just get started. So basically, dirted tanks. What I want to look into a little bit is I put the video out on Friday. Dirted tanks, are they worth it? Asking that question to yourself, are they worth it? Pretty much the good, the bad, and the dirty. So basically the pros and cons of a dirted tank. The way you look at it is you need to decide and do research. If you're first looking into a tank, a dirted tank, if it's something that interests you, you need to decide if it's something that you want to do, your conditions, your fish, what your expectations are from it. Are you looking to set up a tank and keep it like that for years? If that's the case, I think dirted tanks are definitely a cool option to go to. If you're looking for something like more like cichlids or African cichlids, not that it's not possible with dirted tanks, because I believe it is, as long as you have fish that are going to allow plants in your aquarium. You just got to keep that kind of stuff in mind. But when you think of dirted tanks, I mean, what do you think of? You think of the dirt typically, correct? So that's basically the first thing, is the dirt. I want to break down a lot of the different components within the dirted tank and just kind of go over some of the pros and some of the cons that I can think of that may get you to ask that question: are they worth it? Are dirted tanks worth your money? Are they worth your time? Do they live up to the hype that is all over social media right now, all over the YouTube? I know dirted tanks never used to be like that big thing. When I first started my first initial ones, like I've said this before, but like Father Fish wasn't even big at that time. I didn't know really what I was doing. I was experimenting with a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and then really had no clue what I was doing. So it's very cool to have YouTube now, to be able to have the research and the information to see it, but they have blown up in popularity. So I think it's very important for people that might be interested in doing it, who've never done a dirted tank before, to definitely do your research. I think you should do your research on any type of topic or thing that you're interested in doing within this hobby, because it's going to do nothing but benefit you. Now, the problem with research as well is because there are differing views on so many different things. So what I'll tell you today are just my experiences. there might be other people out there or you that have different experience or may not agree, or you might think my pros are your cons or vice versa. So you basically got to take information and you use it to what best fits you and suits you within what you want to do within your aquarium and such so forth. So with that, before we get going, let's see if anyone said Jorge from Mexicali fish keeping. I find them great for planted aquariums. I love me some dirty tanks. Me too, buddy. So let's start with the substrate, okay? So the substrate itself, there are so many different kinds to start with. You can do the father fish one where he's got additives with you and you mix it with dirt. You can do just your standard like I do, just potting soil and compost. There's aqua soils you can use probably underneath your caps. I know Jorge from Mexicali Fish Keeping, you do something a little different too. I remember one of your videos where you do a little mixture of your own, which if I remember correctly, you do that in order to try to cut down on the algae. So like I said, there's all different types of ways to be able to do it. So again, this is very important that you do your research. There are so many different ways to do things, just like anything within this hobby. You just got to find what's going to be best fit your needs. And that's the same thing with the actual soil dirt of it. Now, like I said, I just do organic potting soil and organic compost. I do mix in a little time release fertilizer with that, with the bean really just to kind of try to keep that soil layer fueled for that first months before all the waste and organic matter has time to try to kind of work its way down into that soil layer to fuel it more. So that's the way I do that. But like Father Fish, I'm going to ask these questions next week. I want to ask about his additives. I want to ask the purpose of them, and why it's more beneficial than maybe the way I do it. So again, if you didn't catch it earlier, Father Fish will be my guest on my live stream next Sunday. So if you have questions you may want me to ask him, make sure you leave them in the comments here or leave them in the comments of this live stream after it's over. So that's a big thing, is the actual soil layer itself. So next is, what purpose does this substrate, what pro does it have by having this deep substrate? Well, for me, it is that it creates that denitrifying bacteria. Okay, so by being that thick of a substrate, when you get down to that bottom, it becomes anaerobic, which means it's lack of oxygen, which creates a denitrifying bacteria. And I know I've said this before as well, but it eats your nitrates. It eats that whole nitrogen process. So in all my aquariums, I rarely ever go above 5 parts per million of nitrates. And I find that amazing, because that's beneficial in so many different ways. Not only is it beneficial that it keeps your nitrates down, which I don't care if they get that high anyway, because it's good for the plants, but they never do. But it's just, it cuts down on the maintenance. That's another big thing, which we'll talk about later, is the maintenance of it. By being able to keep your water parameters down by having that available to you, that's a huge thing. So let's say Jeff from Empire of Dirt Aquatics, Jeff Kane, hello, good morning. Let's see who was stopped in here. Roger, good morning, Roger. Trying to keep up with the chat today. Haven't been good at it. All right, so that's a big part with that. But now, what about cap? That's another part of the substrate. Now, there are many differences there as well. Everyone has all different ways that they want to do it, whether it be sand, whether it be gravel, a mix of the two. There's all different ways to do it. And again, this is always going to come back to one thing. It's going to come back to, what do you like? What do you prefer? What's going to work best for you? What's going to work best for your tank? What's going to work best for your situation? So that as well too. So for me, I like sand. I dabbled with gravel in the very beginning. I know I've said this before as well, is that when I started with gravel, I didn't know what type of cap to use. And I looked all over the place, and it was actually Dustin's Fish Tanks who I actually seen that was using gravel. And at that time, like I said, Father Fish wasn't big into YouTube. He was doing the gravel at the time, but I wasn't really sure what to do. And again, at that time, dirty tanks weren't as big as they are now, so there wasn't as much information out there. So it took me a while, and I learned the hard way with the gravel. Now, some people still like gravel, especially if you do like a real small grain gravel, it might help more. But I used pea gravel, and the issues I had with that, definite cons, is that when you have that organic matter, your fish waste, leftover food, plants breaking down, any of that stuff, it's going to break down into the pockets of that gravel. Now, the problem with that is with a dirty tank is, well, you're not vacuuming your gravel, right? So that's just going to sit there. And when that organic matter and waste and all that sits there for that long, it starts to turn into basically dirt. So what was happening in my aquariums that had the gravel cap, I think I had 3 of them. It was basically, I was turning into a dirt layer within that cap. So anytime a fish moved or I'd go in there, I'm always getting dust of dirt and particles coming up from in that gravel. And it's not being able to properly break down and decay and work its way down into that soil. And I didn't like that. So for me, sand was the key. So I had a couple of sand, but I switched them all over to sand. So with sand, in my opinion, that waste, that organic matter, the extra fish food, the fish poop, all that stuff is going to sit at the surface, and it's going to be able to break down on its own while the other organisms in the tank are able to break it down as well. And it can be able to naturally work its way down into that soil without creating a mud layer on top of your aquarium, on top of your substrate. So that's very important for me. And that's why I find sand to be a pro over gravel. But like I said, everyone's got their own opinion, their own style, whatever suits them. Now, I know, like the Wallstedt people, I'm not 100% familiar with the Wallstedt method, but I do know that a lot of them use is gravel, and they swear by it as well. So really, again, like I said, it's always a full circle of coming back to what you want and what you like. So that's with the cap. Let's see who else is in here now. M&C Aquatics, good morning. Adam Lash, good morning. Let's see. Mexicali, I've used several different types of caps from gravel, sand, and kitty litter. I have found that the kitty litter is working the best for me as a cap. Cool. See, like I said, there's always different ways to do things, and there's different ways and different products to do. And that's like a biggest thing I feel like within this hobby. Like, I'm not just even talking dirty tanks, but just in general, that, if you want to try something, that you should just try it. Now, who would have thought like 30 years ago when I first started doing this stuff, like with Mexicali, let's put kitty litter in our aquarium. People would have thought you're freaking mad. But without people doing it and showing that this stuff is possible, you're never going to realize and know what you want to do. Like, for me, I like to dabble in all different types of fish. I dabbled in all different types of aquariums until I reached the dirty tanks, which I like the most. But you're never going to learn really what your favorite thing is, what interests you the most, and what's your ideal fish tank that you really want to keep until you really tried all of them, until you tried as many of the ones that interest you to see what your favorite is. So I fully encourage people to really try to challenge themselves, try to put themselves, back a little bit, to try some things that maybe they would have been afraid to try, and see if it interests you, because maybe it would, and maybe it's something that you really love. So that's that. Let's see who else is here. Let's see, Maul. I guess the carbon in the compost plus nitrate completes the fuel triangle needed for the denitrifying bacteria to take place. Correct. Christian Calkins, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. I capped my dirt with submerged sand from the local creek. That way I already had all the bacteria and microfauna resulting in the tank that acts like an age system from the get-go. Now, that is perfect. You see, if you can take, thank you for mentioning that, by the way, if you can take things actually from nature itself, and you bypass the whole having to put it together with all those components that we use here, you're just making things easier on yourself. And I find that to be very cool and awesome, to be able to do that and just be able to, you jumpstart everything. You kind of skip steps, and I like that very much. It's a great idea. Hello, Ahmad. Let's see, down there. So that's the cap differences, in my opinion. Like I said, all different ways to do it. Now, a con of your substrate within these dirty tanks, obviously, is plant movement. If you need to move plants or remove plants, it can make a mess. It definitely can make a mess. So initially, when you set up these tanks, which I'll get into in a little bit when we talk more about plants, but you really need to have a lot of stem plants. And they are easier to pull out a little bit, but you need to know how to do it. For me, anyway, what works for me is, I showed it in the video, is I grab the plant by the base, and you just, if you have a sand substrate, by the way, if you have gravel, I don't know if this is going to work, and you gently kind of twist it out as you turn it, and that sand will collapse into that hole, and that kind of give you minimal dirt and debris that comes out of the hole. So just moving plants in general is a big con, to be honest with you. I had an Amazon sword in one of my first dirty tanks I ever set up, and I wanted to, it got so big. It's not that I wanted to move it, but the thing was so big, it was in a 29-gallon tank. It was pretty much taking up the entire aquarium. So the fish I had in there had nowhere to go. It was taking out the light, snuffing out the light to all the other plants within the aquarium, and they were suffering. So it was in my best interest to remove that Amazon sword. Now, looking at it now, I definitely handled it the wrong way. What I wound up doing is I pulled it out of the substrate, and it pretty much came in out with a big clump of dirt attached to the root system. My tank went completely black, and it made a big mess. I had to do massive water changes just to clear it up. That's when I still had gravel in that aquarium, and that's another reason what kind of prompted me to go to sand. Now, looking back on it, and I've heard someone actually comment this in my video, I think it was last night, which I thought about doing if it ever happens again. If you have a huge sword like that in an aquarium and you need to get it out of there, instead of trying to pull it out and creating a big mess, try cutting it off at the substrate. So two things are going to happen. You're either going to get some new plant growth of some smaller ones, or it's going to die, and that clump of mass is then going to be broken down and turned into fuel for your soil. So that's what I would suggest with some bigger plants that may grow out of control in this style of tank. So pro and con, but it is a con being able to have to try to move plants because it can make such a mess. So that's definitely something to think about and planning, basically. That's what I try to do with my tanks ever since then, is if I'm putting I try not to put big swords in my aquariums anymore. I try to find like the medium growing ones that maybe only grow like 8 to 10 inches tall, so I don't run into that situation again, because those Amazon swords just get monstrous. But basically, you just want to pre-plan a little bit. Plan ahead of time, knowing if that's the type of plant you're putting in there, know exactly how big they get. Because in this type of a system with that type of nutrients, that's going to be really gorging on all those within that dirt, root layer. They're going to grow, and they're going to grow good. So you want to take that in effect, like especially if you have a bigger tank, think about putting them in a back corner or somewhere. Once they do get to that massive size, it's not going to disrupt your other plants or anything within there, and you don't have to do that. So that's just something to think about. All right, here. Madame Lacrosma. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Hi, Patty. I'm Sarah. I recently started my first dirty tank, and I absolutely love it. I don't think I'll ever go back. Love your channel. I wish I could stay, but I have to go to it. Have a great one. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I appreciate it a lot. Have a good day at work on this day. I had to work yesterday. It was kind of bleh, so I'm glad I'm not today. Let's see. Ahmed just popped in here. I have over 2 years. I can't speak. I have over 2 years old tank with gravel, substrate, no water changed, full of plants, and good amount of fish. It's all about balancing plants, fish, and filtering system. You are correct there. There's more than one way to do a tank. I spoke about that 2 weeks ago in my first live stream about natural tanks. It doesn't have to be a dirty tank to be a natural tank. You just need natural elements from the earth to be able to work in unison, in a balance, in a cycle, to be able to work together to create that. So you're absolutely right. Hey, Kyle from Outside In Aquatics. What's up, y'all? My way to Wisconsin for a fish up. You're going to Milwaukee? Dang, man, I wish I would have went. Yep, I saw that was today. I haven't been down to that one in quite a while. I usually go to the one up in Neenah area, and I support the JNR Aquatic Animal Rescue that runs that one. I usually get a table at that one. So I think that one is in February next. So if you guys ever want to run up there in February, I probably will be there. Anyway, Garcia's in the house. Hey, Garcia. All right, so that's the substrate, basically. So the next element I really kind of want to talk about is the water itself. Now, it's really not truly the water, but it's everything derives from that substrate. That substrate causes basically all the pros and cons within your aquarium, within one of these dirty tanks. So the water itself, the biggest con you're going to get that I find now in my style aquariums is I typically will get cloudy water. I'll get cloudy water usually within a couple weeks after I first set one up to maybe a month or so later. And then they can last a differing amount of times. It could last a couple weeks. It could last a week. I had one that lasted a couple months. So it really depends. Now, I don't run filters. I don't run air in any of my aquariums. On top of that, I try to go all natural. My two bigger tanks with my Oscar and my puffer, I do have wave makers in. The Oscar one, it's more really the kind of move the heater water around, because that heater, for some reason, when it doesn't have that movement of water, it likes to skyrocket in temperature, and I don't want my fish to cook. But the puffer, I did it more because I was battling cyanobacteria, and one of the main causes that I read, there's 10,000 of them, by the way, is not enough water movement. So I put that in there for that. I have them both on timers, basically. So I have them run a half hour for every 2 hours a time. So it's just a once in a while to kick in and move a little bit of water. But besides the point, those are the only two that I had really have mechanical devices in with. Otherwise, it's just all natural lights and heaters, and some of them about all that's in there. So I don't know where I was going with this rambling. So anyway, so So I don't know if the no filter, no air part may have a benefit of cause within that cloudy water. But I do know I've had it in every single one, even when I had filters. Like my first aquarium, that's so well, you can't see it, it's over there. It was my 20 long. That was the first dirty tank I ever set up. That one stayed cloudy for probably, I want to say, almost 2 or 3 months after initially being set up, and it was frustrating the crap out of you. Again, this is before any of this stuff became popular on YouTube. So I don't know, what am I supposed to do? I just kept doing water changes and doing water changes and doing water changes, and it wouldn't go away till finally I was just like, put up my hands and whatever. But after putting up my hands and letting it for a while, guess what? Went away. So what is that from? All I can say is, like I said before, I think I said it in every stream, I'm not an expert when it comes to the science part of these turtle tanks. That is for dang sure. But again, I know from experience some of the things that I've seen. So for me, I can only suspect that it's just from those heavy nutrients that are in the water. The plants can probably only handle so much, but yet I read nothing in my water testing. Like I'll get 0 nitrates or nitrites, 0 ammonia. You know, typically I don't even register any nitrates at all either. And I don't know if it's just basically the tank needs the balance. Now, I hit that subject quite a bit, is basically balance. You need to achieve a balance. That's like your greatest goal when it really comes to any tank, but especially these dirty tanks, is you need a balance. Once you reach and achieve that balance, your tanks are going to pretty much run like well-oiled machines. And by balance, I mean all the different components within an aquarium, especially the dirty aquariums. Once you have your dirt layers, your plants, your water, your inhabitants, everything starts to cycle around, and they all are working in unison together, and they all are complementing each other. It becomes a perfect balance, and then that's when your tanks will get crystal clear, like The one is now that was dirt, was cloudy, like the first months I had it. I mean, it's about 5 years old now, but it's crystal clear. So you just got to achieve it, and you gotta work through it. I've been battling cloudy water with my Oscar tank now. It was crystal clear for probably at least a month, and then it just went cloudy. It's gotten a lot better, so it's starting to get that balance. It's starting to work its way. I had one person message me on Facebook Messenger and was asking me questions about his tank because I was helping him along. He got rid of his filter, he got a dirty tank, and all that kind of stuff to set it up. And he got cloudy water, and he was asking me what to do. And it's basically the same information that Father Fish is going to give you. There's nothing to do. You got to just sit back. If you're overfeeding your fish in your tank, you can cut back on that. But for the most part, you just got to let it sit. You got to let it be and let that tank naturally balance itself out, and it will go away on its own. So that's the biggest thing with that, is just you need to have patience. I know it's very hard. If you have a tank that you really love and you really want people to look at it, or if you have people to come over, like with us who have YouTube channels, like you want to show stuff, but you don't want to show a cloudy water tank. You just got to wait for it to balance itself out and get through it. So let's see. Christian Calkins, I can barely talk today. I normally associate the cloudy water with a bacteria bloom, pretty common with dirted systems given the access of nutrients. Very correct. Great thing is afterwards you have a huge bacterial colony ready there to do some work nitrifying and denitrifying for you. I'll regulate their populations based on food and microorganism ratio. Correct. And also currently I have a huge cloud at the bottom of the tank by the leaf litter. Paramecium galore. Perfect for the microfauna, macrofauna, I'm assuming you meant, and baby fish. Absolutely. That's something we're going to talk on a little bit too, is the food web. But you're correct. To be able to have a vast majority of food, like amount of food in your aquariums of all different sizes, from the bacterial level all the way up to the macrofauna, is very beneficial for any of the type of fish you keep in your aquarium. And it's also, again, that whole balancing that you're looking for. If anything can compensate each other and work with each other to be able to create this natural ecosystem that we're trying to create in these aquariums, that's very beneficial and very cool. And I applaud you for that. All right. Tim TT69, absolutely stay natural as possible. Take a look at my 1,300 liter of me Amazon plant to tank. Definitely. All right. So, Easy Flipper, good morning. I have a tank with organic potting soil, Kappa black sand. Is that okay? Absolutely. Like I said, everyone's got their own way and journey that they want to do it. You can use whatever cap that you want, whether it be sand, gravel, mixtures, whatever you prefer. But the thing is, like I said earlier, you need to find that niche, that thing that best fits you, that you like, that works for you. And sometimes it just takes experimenting a little bit. I use organic potting soil and organic compost, like I mentioned earlier, but people do it all different ways. Just work with it and see how it goes. Like I said, I've had no issues with which way we're going now. So good morning, Jim's Fish. Nice to see you here. All right, so that's basically the water part of it, but let's get to the plants now, the plants themselves. I know I talked a little bit earlier about basically trying to move plants within the aquariums, that can be a definite con because of the dirt that can get displaced and just make a mess basically in your aquariums. But I really want to talk about is really the importance of stem plants, especially to the startup of any type of dirted tank, because, well, mainly they are huge suckers of nutrients. They love to eat that nutrients in the water. And when you first start up a dirted tank, those nutrients are just immensely in there. And that's why probably the biggest con anybody has when it comes to dirted tanks is people complaining about algae issues, about getting algae, dealing with algae, and so forth. And one big thing I can say to do, as I said, is make sure you just ram your tank full of stem plants. That is very, very important in my opinion, because they are going to help you balance that tank a lot faster. I ran into that issue with my puffer tank over there. I didn't have a lot of plants on hand when I first set that up. I needed to set it up at that time that I did because I was moving my puffer and I needed to, get it going. I couldn't let them sit in a tote. So I put the plants that I had available, clippings within my aquariums, in there quickly. And I paid for it. I've been paying for battling with algae issues ever since. I keep putting more stem plants and more stem plants in there, but it's getting better now. But you know, it's been almost a year. Been battling back and forth with it. So stem plants are a huge thing, and like I said, you want to put a lot of them in there. Now, do they need to stay in there long term if, say, you want to put a bunch of swords or crypts or stuff like that in there? No. Once it gets up and established, you can take some of those stem plants out if you really want to, and you can put crypts or Amazons or swords in there, or you can put them all in there at once too in the very beginning. That's what I try to do. I try to put my swords and my crypts in there and then load stem plants all around them, because then my stem plants grow so much within my aquariums. They're perfect for me because I get to clip them and put them everywhere. So yeah, like I said, stem plants are hugely important when it comes to dirty tanks. By just putting swords or crypts in your freshly started dirty tanks, you're going to run into algae issues. Now, do you mind algae? I don't mind algae for the most part. I know there's a reason why it's there. I know that eventually, typically, the algae will start to go away, but it depends on the type of algae. Now, I've had this hair algae, some type of string algae. I really don't even know what it is in my puffer tank that's just glues onto my plants. It's not like my normal hair algae I'll get in some of my other aquariums I can just pull out and it comes right out and it doesn't hurt nothing. This stuff is attached to it and I have to trim the plants. It becomes it's a big eyesore and it's unattractive and it's annoying, to be honest with you. So I hate blackbeard algae as well. I don't really have that much in my tanks anymore. I had that more, honestly, when I didn't have dirty tanks than I do now, which is kind of weird. Maybe there's some kind of thing there with that. But so stem plants are a huge deal. Like I said, that's something you definitely should not overlook because they're a definite pro because they are going to help you from cutting down that algae possibility and maybe cutting it out completely. So let's see. And then also the plant growth, the growth of these plants. I've had insane plant growth in this style of tank. Now, can you get insane plant growth in a sand tank or a gravel substrate tank alone? Absolutely. I don't think there's anything wrong with either one of them. But for my own being and my own experiences, these dirty tanks have I can't even explain just the amount of plants that I have growing now. Some of that also, I found the lighting has played a big part into that. And if we get to it, I want to talk about the human components about that as well. But some of my lights, like I have, shameless plug, but Ciora lights, I have them in 3 tanks now, and I have a video coming out on it. I don't know when yet, but I just shot it. My plants grow like crazy with these lights. My tank here with my swordtails, I have to trim this Ludwigia in here like almost every week, which in turn is great because now I get to compensate by putting that in other tanks. And I use them for selling also when I go to swap meets, which is really cool as well. So plant growth is amazing, but like I said, dirty tanks aren't the be all end all when it comes to plant growth. There's different options, but this is my favorite. So let's check back in here with the chat and see what people are saying before I move on to the next one. What about liquid fertilizers from Rob Nero? Hello. I don't use them anymore. When I first started the deep substrates and I was getting like 0 to like maybe 5 parts per million nitrates, I was freaking out because you're always told you need the plants eat the nitrates. That's their food. So I would pump a bunch of fertilizers in my aquariums, but it would just go nowhere. But my plants were still growing like crazy. So again, I'm not an expert on the science part of it. Why that is, I don't know. That's another thing we could ask Father Fish next week. But I don't use them anymore. I don't have a need for them. I don't even use them in a couple of the breeding tanks, but I got plants in them. But I don't use it in any of that anymore. So they're not necessary. But if that's something you want, go nuts. All right, my tank, Christian Calkins, again, I'm ruining your name. My tank is currently loaded with stem plants and floaters. No issues with algae. Water characteristics are stable. Just not a huge fan of the look of them on the stems. Yeah, I get that. Definitely. Kyle, you're a big fan of Ciora lights? Yep, me too. My friend Chris Stubbs from Stubbs Aquatics actually was my contact to get a hold of them. And sorry if I outed you there, buddy. But yeah, I've been talking to them and they sent me some lights and I absolutely love them. Yeah, I get them for free, but I can honestly say they're one of my favorite light companies right now. From the amount of plant growth, they're very, very bright and they're very, very affordable. So, all right, before we move on to the next topic, I'm going to say it again. I mentioned it a couple times now. Next week, Sunday, make sure you're here because I'm going to have a special guest, Father Fish, will be joining me on my live stream. I plan on doing a interview style live stream with him. I'm coming up with probably about 10 questions. I want to find out really who Lou Foxwell, Father Fish, really is, the man behind the YouTube persona. I want to know how he got there. I want to know more about his methods. I want him to explain his methods in his own words for maybe people on here that aren't familiar with it or maybe just don't agree with it. Maybe it'll change your mind. Maybe you'll understand him more because obviously he's a controversial figure when it comes to this hobby a lot of times. Like I said, you either like him or you don't like him, or maybe you're in between and you don't care. So I'm hoping to maybe put some of that to rest a little bit. So like I said, next Sunday, Father Fish will be here. So please stop by. And again, if you have questions that maybe you think I could ask him or maybe you want answered, try popping them in the comments here. If I see it, I'll write it down. Otherwise, put them in the comments of the live stream after this over so I can see it and I'll take them into consideration. And yeah, so next week again, don't forget, Father Fish will be here. All right, so let's check the chat one more time before we move on. What's your water like, Patty? I had to start using rainwater to cut my super hard tap water. Wisconsin well water has too much magnesium, calcium, and iron for good plant growth, in your opinion. I don't do anything. I take it straight from the tap, to be honest with you. My water, I think when I do test my water, my pH is usually right around 7. That's in my tank water. I never really tested out of the tap before. I had dirty tanks. It usually was in like 7.2, 7.4, somewhere around there. I've never had issues. My plants been growing amazing, whether I've had them dirty tanks or not, to be honest with you, when it comes to that. I'm not sure where in Wisconsin you're from. Maybe it's a little different by you, but so far I got a wood desk here. Knock on wood, that continues. I've really been having nothing but good luck with that. So let's see. So maintenance wise, let's talk a little bit about that. We talked a little bit about algae already, consuming with the plants and all that stuff. So algae definitely, like I said, is a con, but it really depends if algae really bothers you or not. Like I said, for me, I know it's a means to an end, and it actually looks natural, so that doesn't bother me as well for the most part, as long as my plants aren't suffering. I don't mind if I have a little bit of algae in my aquarium because, you know, if you go down to a local lake or river or pond, I mean, it's not going to be a crystal clear, pristine area unless you got a flowing river with rocks at the bottom, and even there you're going to have some kind of algae. So algae doesn't bother me, like I said, as long as it doesn't hurt my plants or destroy it. So maintenance wise with these tanks, there's little to none, to be honest with you. The biggest maintenance issues I have with these aquariums, and it's really not an issue, is having to trim the plants so often. I have so many plants to trim all the time, but again, that's good and bad. It's good because I get to put them in all these aquariums and then try to keep them for when I do wind up going to shows, which is only like twice a year if I do them. So that leaves me with all these plants. So I started up, well, that'll be the video next week. I started up some little breeding for profit tubs for plants and shrimp and stuff like that. So I can build up my stocks for the next swap that I'll be going to in February. So maintenance itself, like I said, the worst for me is trimming plants, which is not really a con. It's more of a pro and a con, I guess. But that in turn, I love maintenance. I love being able to come down and actually work in this fish room. I love just sticking, even if I don't got to stick my hands in the water, if I just want to move a plant here or there, if I want to do whatever, it's fun for me to do maintenance. As far as water changes, well, that is another touchy subject for some people, apparently, which I don't really get. I've never really understood that, why water changes can be such a controversial subject. If you don't have a planted tank, if you don't have a dirted tank, I would assume that water changes are pretty much a needed thing. It's a basic thing. I always did them that way. I even did them when I just had planted tanks. But with dirty tanks, your nitrates are so low. And I know nitrates aren't the only factor, but they're so low. Are they really needed? Um, and that really depends on the hobbyist and what your opinions are. Now, I know there are people that have told me that they haven't done a water change for, a year or more on their dirted aquariums. And if that's working for them, that's great. Like I stated before, I do water changes, but I don't do them that frequently. I think I don't really have a time schedule, to be honest with you. If I would say it, probably like once every couple months. I just feel like that exchange of water and oxygen and all the minerals that come in and out with that is very beneficial for your plants. Like I said, it never has anything to do with nitrates, because I barely ever register any, to be honest with you, like I said before. So water changes is really one of those things where it really depends on every individual hobbyist, and it's always gets, again, like I said in the beginning of the stream, kind of coming around what your preference is, what your belief system is, what you're looking for, excuse me, what you're looking for within your aquarium, whether it be dirted or not, and how you want to do things. I think water changes, especially if you're a breeder and you breed stuff, yeah, it's absolutely necessary. Can you breed in these style of tanks? Yeah, you can. I don't know if you have fry systems and having to feed like 3 to 5 times a day, is that going to hamper your system by maybe making a bacteria bloom and such, and maybe need to do water changes? I don't know. I've never gotten to that point. I pretty much try to breed naturally within my aquariums for the most part. If they breed, they breed. And if I have babies, I can always pull them and put them wherever, but I try not to feed any more than I normally do. So that's something to think about when it comes to water changes. But everyone has their own opinion on it, like I said, and it's completely and utterly up to you guys. So let's see. Adam Lash, southeast corner, 460 TDS, pH 7.8 to 8.4. Most plants hate my water. I think it's because of the outrageous amount of magnesium we have from the soils in our water to move through. That could be down in that southeast. Yeah, that could be. Yeah, I don't have pH that high at all. Any of that, like I said, I don't suffer. Not sure what to do with that one, unfortunately. Hey, Ma Fish Guy Aquarium Care Guides. Hello, hey everyone. Dirty tanks aren't my favorite. They're just messy. Well, that's the point though. I don't mind messy. If you're gonna have a dirty tank, and that's the thing, people got to realize, if you want a dirty tank, you can have a clean, pristine one if you do water changes all the time to keep the substrate clear. But and then a dirty tank, I want it to look a little dirty. I want it to look natural. I want it to look, at least my opinion, I want it to look like you're at the bottom of a lake or a river. I kind of want it to look natural. I think it's more beneficial for your fish. And that's just what I look for. Again, like I said before, you go back to what you want and what you desire and what you're looking for within your aquarium and what your goals are. And for me, that's my goal. So that's why I like it. Jeffro, hello. Dirty tanks hold enough bacteria where you can do regular water changes without big cycle crashes. Very correct. Like I said, when I do water changes on mine, it's typically only about like 15% or so. I just take my my siphon hook and I put it up on my tank, so it only drains down probably like that much. El Dragon Rojo, I do water changes every quarter year. Yep, not a bad thing. But if you have Jeffro, but if you have enough plants, it'll almost clean itself. It's just preference, and it depends on if you keep a food web or not. And correct, and that gets into the food web part. Correct. That was the next thing I wanted to talk about is the food web. That's another big part and component of a dirted aquarium. Not I can't speak. Not everyone does them, and that's okay. I have some tanks that have the food web and some that don't. It's putting leaf litter and breaking stuff down within your aquarium, and it definitely makes your tank look dirty. It looks messy, but the fish love it. The inhabitants love it. It creates more of a cycle within your aquarium. It creates that layer of microfauna and macrofauna and everything to be able to feed off that, which helps break things down more within your aquarium to make them down more fine, so that actually can work its way down through your cap. They reach that soil layer, which then in turn can feed that dirt, which can in turn feed your plants. and so on and so forth. So food webs are very cool. There are things you need to look out for, though. Like I said, if you are going to do it, depending on where you live and stuff, but you really need to look out for things that you don't want in your aquarium, like dragonfly nymphs and stuff like that. I've never seen those in my resurrection jars that I've collected, but I have found lots of planaria worms. Excuse me. Now, I know there's a lot of talk on those as well. When I seen a live stream with Father Fish and Philip Works, they're talking about the planaria really are not that bad. They're basically just a form of a detritus worm, but they're a carnivore one. They are going to eat like a dead snail or shrimp. Now, people say that they eat shrimp. I don't have any proof to one way or the other. I have had planaria worms I found in one of my tanks, but I don't keep shrimp in that one. I keep plenty of snails. Snails are fine. But like I said, you just need to keep an eye on the inhabitants that you're putting into your aquarium too, because that's very big. I know there's probably not a large amount of different ones, but it depends where you live in the world too. I mean, I'm just talking what's really around my area in the United States here. There's different probably bugs maybe potentially around the world that could be doing different things to you. So just keep an eye on that. And for those things, I would also recommend the Father Fish Discord. If you go on the description of his video or description of his channel, there's a link there. There is a guide within that Discord that gives you, someone put that in there, where it's got pictures and then it gives guides about what things are, if they're good, if they're bad, and what they are. So I find those to be very beneficial, and those are very cool. Okay, let's see. Food webs, Jeffro, food webs are food webs help for breeding with me. I feel like fish are more prolific knowing that the fry is born with food available. Absolutely. I've had that in my little 5-gallon grow tank for my white cloud minnows. They're growing like crazy up there. And I had a bunch of cyclops and copeds and all kinds of different little organisms in there. So I don't have to feed them as much, especially when I'm working. They always have a plethora of food. Now, a lot of those things are gone now because they've gotten, they're probably like 1/4 of an inch long now or so, something like that, coming up on a 1/2 inch. So they're getting big. They're almost ready to go into the main white cloud tank. So that's very beneficial as well. I completely agree. Jeff, if you're breeding, they are evil. They eat my rainbow fish eggs. I'm assuming you're talking about the planaria. That's my concern. I have the one tank I have found them in. They're in with my rare Matano rice fish. I see them with eggs all the time, but I don't know where they're laying them yet. When I talked to LRB about them fish, because that's where I got them from, he said that they are prolific for eating their young and eating their eggs. So I don't know if the planaria are the cause or they're just eating them themselves. I really haven't investigated it too much yet because I've still been in the white cloud breeding area. Once I move over to them and these other rice fish, I'm going to try to keep a better eye on them. So yeah, like I said, just keep an eye out on things because you really need to be aware of what you're pouring in your aquariums. And I think I don't touch on that enough in some of my videos that I've made about the food webs. And I think I'm going to be making a video about that. That was my plan, about those planaria, and really just not that food webs are bad, but the caution of what's in them, maybe different ways to be able to utilize them. So, all right. So let's move on to the next, and that is human components. Like I said before, the good and the bad. Lights are good. They're going to help you grow your plants. They really are. Unless you're able to do something like, bring up LRB again, if you're able to do something that has a natural setting with sunlight to be able to do your to light your tank for your plants, they're very beneficial. But the cons, obviously, it depends on the light. I mean, I've had some lights that just aren't bright enough. They don't have the right whatever in them, and my plants don't grow. Excuse me. I had my 129-gallon tank that my white clouds are currently in now. They had angelfish in there, a breeding pair, when I first set that up as a dirty tank, and my plants would not grow in that thing whatsoever. I had a cheap Amazon light on there. I don't even know what brand it was. It just was probably like $15 off Amazon. It lit up the tank. I thought it would have been fine, but plants were just not growing. But algae was, algae really liked it. And I think that was also part of the problem, like I mentioned earlier, but not putting enough stem plants in that aquarium either for the initial startup of one of those tanks. There just wasn't enough things in there really eating those nutrients. So that on top of the light, there's so much nutrients, not a lot of light. The algae is going to outcompete your plants and blah, 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 blah. Sucks, right? So it's important to get a light if you're going to get one that's going to work properly. Now, there's plenty of them out there nowadays that are affordable. Like I mentioned before, Sierra, Higer's got some decent lights. I know I got a light from Glorium once too. That's a decent light. Been growing plants really well in my Oscar tank. So there's all different brands out there. Just got to do some research again, like I said, and make sure you get the right things. Now, as far as filters and such like that, there's really no pros and cons to them, to be honest with you, in my opinion. It's either you want them or you don't. Only cons I can think of is if you had some kind of filter with high flow that's going to be pushing your substrate and everything around. That could be a definite con because you're going to disrupt, especially if you have a food web, it's going to really disrupt everything under there. For instance, my rainbow shiner tank up there, when I redid that one, I didn't have any flow in it at all. And I knew by reading that rainbow shiners really want flow when it comes to their natural habitat and to be able to have like rocks and stuff underneath them to be able to scatter their eggs on. So what I did was I had this old one. I had a old power head. I initially got a wave maker for it from Higer, and I put it in there. It was rated for like a 15-gallon tank, but that thing was so powerful. As soon as I turned it on, it just shot everything up. I knew I couldn't use it. So I found this power head that was, I don't even know, I bought it like years and years and years ago. It was just sitting in my tub of junk stuff that I have, my just in case stuff that I keep that I never throw away. And I put it on there and it works great. And it doesn't push my substrate down. It doesn't push my debris or anything up into the water column. It keeps everything down. I have it shooting across the tank to my rock pile. My rainbow shiners absolutely love it. They've colored up immensely since then. I swear they're breeding, but I have so many snails and such in that tank. I highly doubt anything is ever going to survive, but it's just cool seeing them being able to move around. So those human components, like with filters, that'd be the only con. Just make sure you have something that's not going to completely and utterly disrupt your surface and your substrate, because that's just going to make a big problem for you. Because not only is it going to push stuff around and put in the water column, it could create bacteria blooms, which is then going to lead to cloudy water. And you could potentially get algae issues from all that on top of it. It's just going to make a mess. So that I don't use filters, mainly because I said this before, there's nothing wrong with them. I just like the natural look. If I would use filters down here in my fish room, it would be sponge filters like I have in the past, but it takes up real estate. It takes up room where I can put more plants. I mean, yes, you can hide sponge filters behind stuff, absolutely. But I don't know. And I don't like that noise of the constant tick, 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 tick. I love to come down here in my fish room and just have no noise at all. I love just walk in here and you just don't even know that a fish tank is running. You know, I had so many years of just being annoyed when I had like hang on the backs and the water just constantly splashing and hearing that noise, especially when I had my puffer tank upstairs. All I would hear was the noise of freaking water splashing when I'm trying to watch TV, or if I had a sponge filter in there, the constant noise of the bubbling. I hated that. I like quiet. And I think LRB hit it on the nuts too when he talked about it once about, you know, that vibration and the noise and everything within the aquariums that they're in. Yeah, I'm sure the fish get used to it, but I mean, it's not what they're potentially used to. I guess if they're born in tanks, I guess they are. But you know, I like to have things as natural as possible. So for me, I prefer not to do filters. And but like I said, there's nothing wrong with them at all. It's not that I never would go back to them if the need be. I know people have told me, I know this is getting off the dirty tank subject, but people have told me, like with my puffer and my Oscar in those dirty tanks with no filters and no air, that I'm gonna need filters in there, or else, you know, bacteria, ammonia is gonna build up, all this kind of stuff. I mean, I haven't had any issues with that of yet. Again, knock on wood, we'll see what happens. But yeah, Jeff, like you said, I enjoy the sound of water movement to a point. I agree with you. I just like the quiet. That's just me. I mean, if I'm out at a lake or if you're out in a canoe or whatever, like you are, Jeff, I love the sound outside, maybe of a trickle of water when I'm out in a boat and stuff like that. But anyway, so that's that. I guess one thing I do want to touch on yet is someone asked this question in my video from this week, and the question was, how long does it take to balance an aquarium? I wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit. Um, it really depends, and there's so many varying factors on it, and I think it's very important to just kind of take all that into consideration, because it's basically everything that we've been kind of talking about today, like pros and cons, that they all need to balance. And I've said it a little bit earlier. You have all these different components, even if it's not a dirty tank, like I said. And I mentioned it as an analogy, as if you have a chair and you have those legs. I know I said this before too, but I'll say it again if you didn't hear it. All those legs of that chair need and depend to support that ecosystem. They balance that ecosystem. And when those legs are balanced and they're even and sitting perfectly, your tank is going to run great. That ecosystem is going to run great. But if one of those cogs get taken out or they get shortened or whatever the case be, and it's not balanced anymore, your ecosystem, it's not going to be, you're going to get off balance. You're going to get cloudy water. You're going to get this. You could get a spike in something, you know what I mean? So it's very important to really just take your time and know that if you put the right components in there, you do your research, and you know, just to kind of let things wait out, you will achieve that balance. But to give a time frame on it, there really is no time frame. I've had some tanks that, I mean, right out the jump have been great. I've had other ones, like I said, my puffer tank, where it's still struggling a little bit, and I mean, we're almost a year into it. So it really depends. So that's pretty much the talk on the dirty tanks I wanted to give today. Let's check the chat one more time here. Jeffro, I got rid of my vibrating and bubbling for the fish, but I didn't seize well without it. You really get used to that white noise. Yeah. So anyway, one last time, I want to announce that next Sunday at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time on my live stream, I'm going to have Father Fish on. He's going to be my special guest. Again, I'm going to do an interview style with him. I'm going to ask him a bunch of questions about really who Lou Foxwell, Father Fish, really is. I want to know how he came to be, how Father Fish, the YouTuber, came to be. I want to know more about his methods. I want him to explain them in his words. I want people that maybe don't agree with it or agree with it either to hear his viewpoints, and just hear from the man himself and go from there. So I'm really excited for it as well, Christian. I never would have thought, watching YouTube, even making these videos, when you get some of the bigger YouTubers out there to be able to recognize you and want to come on, I'm very excited for that. He has been pretty much a big inspiration within my aquariums and my fish room here. Not the only one, but one of them. And it's very cool to be able to sit down, even if it is face to face through a camera or a TV here, to be able to talk to him. Because I got plenty of questions I love to ask him myself, but I want to try to keep it more. I want everyone to learn something. I want everyone to learn, like I said, who he really is and stuff like that. And I think it's really cool to be able to have that opportunity. And so yeah, so like I said, if you got questions you want me to potentially ask him, the stream here is almost done, but I'd feel free to drop them in the comments of the stream when it's over. And like I said, I'll take them into consideration. I've got about 8 of them right now for sure that I know I want to ask him, but I got a couple more I want to throw in there yet, but I'm not sure what I want to do yet. So, so that being said, thank you very much for joining me today. These live streams have still been a little bit of a struggle for me. I'm still trying to figure it all out, trying to do the flow of talking about what I want to talk about, but yet keep an eye on the chat and try to keep everyone engaged. So I'm still learning on it. It'll take a little bit, but I appreciate everyone's patience. I appreciate everyone's comments. I appreciate everyone coming in and saying their views on stuff. It means a lot. Like I said, I love this hobby. I love everything about it. I love that you can have a view on one thing and you can have an exact opposite view, but we can come together and still have the love for the hobby itself. I mean, I don't know. I just love it. So anyway, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it very much. If you're not subscribed to my channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button. I also am offering memberships to my channel if you're interested. I'm going to be including a lot more stuff into that eventually here. So if you're interested, and also, yeah, always think outside the box and take a step back into nature. Before we go, Jeff, one question. Why did he sell the store to open another? Did he miss it? I will write that down. That being said, see you later, guys. Have a great Sunday. If you're into American football, let's see some football, baby. I got the Packers. They're going to get their butts kicked probably today. But anyway, see you guys later. Hope to see you next Sunday. And got a new video coming out on Friday, maybe on Tuesday too. I'm not really sure yet, but stay tuned and we'll see you next week.